We're going to do a losers and winners of free agency. We could start with the losers. I think that I like to end on a good note. So if you want, I'll go ahead and start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. So my number 5 loser, I'll do a top 5 of both of them. You will too, I think. The Toronto Raptors, still a good team. Still got a bunch of good players. Siakam actually probably will have a better role this season and can show maybe if he can be the number one priority guy on a team. Kyle Lowry is going to be able to step up. But losing Kawhi Leonard always makes you a loser, and I have to put them on this list. So Raptors, still have to take them seriously in the playoffs, but they're not a championship contender anymore. But they won the championship, so they can't be that big of a loser. Just offseason, they're a little bit of a loser. Number 4, Portland Trailblazers, and it's for the reason that I just said. So, yeah, you got Hassan Whiteside, but the amount of guys that they lost, I didn't realize until I just thought about it earlier today. They weren't going to be on my list. And then I thought, wait a minute. They went from being a Western Conference Finals team to now essentially you have Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Hassan Whiteside, who we don't really know.
Exactly.
Numbers. He also got benched with the Heat for various reasons. So we don't know if he's going to mess with that locker room. His defense actually isn't as good as you would think, when you compare it to what did he have, like 4 blocks a season or something crazy like that a few seasons ago. Yeah. You'd think that he's a little bit better of a defender, but he's a little bit inconsistent on that end. Yeah. And then you have Nurkic, who's really good, but outside of that, you lost Enes Kanter, you lost Al-Farouq Aminu, you lost Seth Curry, Myers Leonard, Mo Harkless. You brought back Rodney Hood, but your only real additions this offseason were Hassan Whiteside, who, as I said, is a little bit of a question mark, and Nasir Little, who you might actually have to start him or at least play him relatively early. And that's my biggest problem with it. I actually think that he could be a decent player if you don't play him all that much from the get. He's not going to be that good this season. I'm telling you, we have one listener in Oregon, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
We had a guy. Okay, my friend from Oregon. If you were a Trailblazers fan, I'm a North Carolina fan. I just want to warn you, Nasir Little. If he's good, it will be a shock to me. It really, really will. I hope he is good. I hope he's good for you. I hope he's good for Tar Heel Nation. But rookie season, I'm not expecting a single thing from him. Down the road, I think the Trailblazers might actually be a good fit for him. But season number 1, I just don't think that they could go from a Western Conference Finals team to out of the playoffs, and that's exactly what I have happening actually. So that's my number 4 loser. My number 3 loser is DeMarcus Cousins. You could argue that he's a winner because he went to the Lakers. I would argue he's a loser because he got signed for, what was it, $3.5 million. Some ridiculous. I mean, we're talking about if he didn't tear his Achilles and then mess up his quad this offseason, he'd probably be on a $150-ish million contract right now for some team.
Yep.
Instead, he's getting paid less than $5 million, which is still great. Obviously, you and I wish we could get less, just a little bit what he's getting paid, but the amount that he lost from last season and then this season, even after having actually a pretty good bounce back season, it wasn't phenomenal. It wasn't the Boogie that we always knew, but it was still good enough to where I think that I would have thought that he would have gotten paid more than he did last season. I would have thought that he would have been at least one team's priority free agent, and he almost had no market. So I think that he has to be my number 3 loser. My number 2 would be the New York Knicks fans. As I said before, I actually think the Knicks have a decent accumulation of young talent, but the fans, I feel for you. I really, really do. You had hopes of getting Kyrie, KD, and Zion Williamson, or Kyrie, KD, and Anthony Davis. With some variation of those 4 players, even just one would have been nice. And there were 0. And that's why I think that they ultimately have to be a loser in this topic. I will say, as I said, I think that they're actually a playoff contender if Kevin Knox ascends the way that I'm hoping he does, if Dennis Smith Jr. proves that he actually still has a spot as a starter in this league, and if RJ Barrett comes in, plays, the role that we're expecting him to, Julius Randle plays even as well as he did last season, and Mitchell Robinson gets better the way that he did. But ultimately, when you lose out on that many stars, you have to be a loser. My number one loser, and this hurts me, is the Dallas Mavericks. We were talking about the Dallas Mavericks getting someone like Kemba Walker, and as soon as Boston cleared up enough space for Kemba
Y'all
Walker,
were talking about that, not me, but anyway, go ahead.
as soon as Kemba Walker, as soon as the Boston Celtics cleared up that space, the Mavericks were no longer even in it. Then we started talking about Malcolm Brogdon, Tobias Harris, maybe D'Angelo Russell if we were getting crazy, Julius Randle, Al Horford. Patrick Beverley was actually supposed to be the closest thing to a lock. And then they tried to trade for, I don't know who it was. They tried to trade for either Goran Dragic or they tried to trade for Kelly Olynyk and Derek Jones Jr. And somewhere in that trade discussion, they forgot to give Patrick Beverley a phone call. Now the Mavericks starting point guard is DeLon Wright, who I don't think that he's a bad point guard. But as far as starting point guards in the league, I could probably name you 15 point guards better than DeLon Wright right now as starters. Maybe he's a good backup, but if you put him as a backup, then who are you going to start? Jalen Brunson? Okay, well then same thing. I could probably name you 15 point guards in the league who are better than Jalen Brunson. The point guard there, the point guard situation with the Mavs could have been fixed. They also lost on Danny Green, who they spent so much time trying to get Danny Green. Danny Green and his podcast host said, oh, man, he might even just announce that he's going to the Mavs early. And they didn't get Danny Green. I said Brogdon didn't go there. Al Horford was someone that was supposed to be a fallback option. He wasn't there. They didn't apparently like Julius Randle. The Mavs are so picky. Just get somebody. They can become a trade asset at some point, but get somebody who's good. Don't tell me that Seth Curry is going to be your top free agency acquisition when Kemba Walker, Malcolm Brogdon, Tobias Harris, D'Angelo Russell, and all these guys. You had a max slot. You're a big city with a big market, and Seth Curry is the biggest free agent that you got. You're a loser. You might not make the playoffs this season. You might have them in the playoffs. I don't, because the West is so stacked. The Dallas Mavericks are my biggest loser. Now, I will say, not Kemba because he doesn't care about Dallas. Luka and Kristaps are great 1-2 punch.
Mm-hmm.
But Kristaps wasn't an offseason acquisition. He was a midseason. You pay for Chris. You gave him a 5-year deal, $158 million. But you also gave first-round picks. You gave Dennis Smith Jr. So
tell him, Kathy.
You can't consider him, in my opinion, an offseason acquisition. He was a re-signed guy. So was Dwight Powell. So was Max. That would be like saying that, the Dallas Mavericks got Dwight Powell. That was an offseason acquisition. No, it wasn't an acquisition. It wasn't already had. He was already on the team. Actually, as a matter of fact, Dwight Powell wasn't even an acquisition. He was literally on contract for the season and was extended. Maxi Kleber was a restricted free agent. Kristaps Porzingis was a restricted free agent. Dorian Finney-Smith was a restricted free agent. You got Boban. That's cool. I do like all of the guys that they got. I like them. But you missed out on your tier 1, 2, and 3 play. It's one thing. I'm sorry if I'm going to keep going on, but I'm sorry. It's one thing to miss out on guys like Dwight Howard or Chris Paul or Carmelo Anthony or, even guys like Mike Conley and Hassan Whiteside, guys that no one really expected you to get. It's even one thing to miss out on DeAndre Jordan, who said yes, and that's not really your fault. It's a whole other thing to miss out on Kemba Walker, which I understand, and then go all the way down to Seth Curry. I like Steph. Don't misunderstand this. I do like Seth Curry, but we were talking about a max contract opening in the 4th biggest metropolitan area, giant market, with Kristaps and Luka. You were trying to get a 3rd star and make yourself a contender. Didn't happen. Dallas Mavericks are my biggest loser. Hayden, it is your turn. I need water after that.
Guess who my number 5 biggest loser is?
Dallas Mavericks. Is it? Wow, you're being nice.
Oh God. Oh. Okay. Basically all the reasons that Kennedy just said.
Been thinking about this for a week now.
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah, I agree. You know, we talked about this before. Big market, max contract. You didn't even go after Brogdon, who, you know, was relatively on a decent deal. At least we think so. And it's just funny, you know, you're talking about how they weren't high on Julius Randle, and so they went out and got Seth Curry. And again, I like Seth Curry. He's a good, you know, role guy. But like you said, if that's your big offseason acquisition and you have a max slot, I think that's an issue, especially as a big market team. You got two young guys. Yeah.
It's one thing to be the Kings and have a max contract spot.
Exactly.
No one expects them to get a guy like, you know, Kawhi Leonard or Kemba Walker, Malcolm Brogdon, Tobias Harris. No one expects that. Dallas, you maybe shouldn't get Kawhi or Kemba or those guys, but you should probably get a D'Angelo Russell, Al Horford, someone of that level.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm done, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
At number 4, I have the owner of the Knicks, Steve Mills, because as Stephen A. said, a mere 30 minutes after your crosstown rival announced that they were signing your two biggest offseason targets, you put out a statement saying that you're expecting to contend because you signed Julius Randle.
I'm so sorry to the Knicks fans. I really am. I want to see the Knicks do well.
And you want to know who else they signed? Bobby Portis.
Dang. I forgot he was in the league. Is he good?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I liked him in college.
I did too. It's just not after punching what's his face in the face.
Okay, I'll pull up Bobby Portis' stats. He played 50 games this season, averaged 14 points, 8 rebounds, 44% shooting, and 39.3% from 3. So he's respectable, but Julius Randle and Bobby Portis really are a giant step down from what they were expecting. It just is what it is.
Yeah. At 3, I have Toronto. Yes, they kept all these guys, but at the same time, you lost basically the biggest the biggest free agent in Kawhi Leonard. Danny Green left for another contender. Yes, we'll get to see whether Pascal can be, you know, the sort of number 1 guy. But I don't know necessarily how well that might work out. He definitely won't be as efficient as he was this year, I don't think. So I'm very curious to see. But I think anytime you lose someone such as Kawhi and then you lose another good 3-and-D guy like Danny Green, I think you have to be considered a loser. Number 2, I have, and this might be a little high, but I have Houston.
Okay.
You know, again, they kept talking about trying to put these pieces together to acquire Jimmy Butler. That didn't happen. You know, we have this whole drama between Chris Paul and James Harden, and the organization coming out and saying that it's not true, and then you have all these like snippets of videos coming out where they're like bickering back and forth. Then we get the report they haven't talked since like February or something like that. And I think it's just a big fall from grace because, like you said, just 2 years ago, they were, they had a 3-2 lead on the Warriors going home with a chance to take out, this juggernaut that we've had for the last 4 or 5 years. So I just think going from that to all the drama that they have going on now, another failed playoff, their system doesn't seem to necessarily translate to playoff success. And then you talk about how they were wanting to trade kind of their centerpiece center, a guy who does a lot of good things for them. I just think you have to put them as a number 2 loser. And number 1, this one is going to hurt you, I'm sure. I have Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook.
I thought about putting him on mine, but
I feel bad for Russell. I do. I don't want people to think that I'm a Russell hater. I just can't stand how people act like,
like he's elite.
Yeah. Not only did Kevin Durant not want to play with you anymore, but a year after Paul George signed an extension to stay in OKC, by the time he left, reports were going on about how the relationship between him and Russell had soured, and Paul George didn't think that he could continue to win with Russell Westbrook, which is the same thing we heard when Kevin Durant first left. And so at this point, you're Russell Westbrook, you're 31, 30.
He's 30 now, I think.
30. Your athleticism is going to start to slip a little bit. You've never been an efficient shooter. You're actually a terrible shooter. And now you've had 2 superstar wings decide that they no longer want to play with you. So I think the noise coming from everyone else attacking Russell Westbrook is only going to get louder and louder. And so I have him as the number 1 loser.
So I thought about putting him on. The only reason I didn't is because if he gets traded to a better situation, then I do think that he it's unfortunate that the team that he's been extremely loyal to over the entirety of his career now needs to trade him, and he probably wants to get traded at this point, even though it's really not his. It probably wasn't what he wanted even just a week ago.
Yeah.
But so I do think that he's a loser from that standpoint. But I do think that if you put him on an Eastern Conference team, I know some people think that the Heat would be a good fit for him, or the Pistons. I think that the Heat would be a weird fit, but the talent is good enough to where I think that you have to take them seriously, and they could beat a team. They could beat a lot of teams out there. Maybe they could be a somewhat of a sleeper contender, but they would need some shooters. But I do think that would be a decent team for him. I like the Pistons fit, actually. I've always wanted to see him with a better scoring big man. I love the idea of him with Anthony Davis, or the idea of him with, we talked about it a few weeks ago, but Kevin Love, if he could have had Kevin Love this season, would have been cool to have him. But even just like 3 years ago, I think that would have been really awesome. I would have loved to have seen Westbrook with some sort of backcourt or front court guy. So is front court the big men? I always get that confused.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen him with some better scoring talent from that position, but I think that the thing with him is that when he shoots less, his numbers are actually a little bit more efficient. He's not a great he's never been a great 3-point shooter, but this is the first season that he actually has shot less than he normally does, and his numbers were still not efficient. So I'm kind of curious to see how that continues to go on, because I was truly disappointed in him this season. Last season, I wasn't that disappointed. He shot 45% from the floor. 30% from three is not good really at all, but you at least have to kind of defend him from out there. I think he was great up until last season, and his player efficiency numbers were phenomenal, especially his MVP season. We could talk about how his shooting number from the three hasn't been efficient, but his overall numbers have been efficient until this season, where I looked at his player efficiency numbers and he was really down the list. He used to be top three. He was top three for a really good few years stretch. So I'm curious. I really am just curious to see how the rest of his career pans out. Now that the Thunder are giving up, he might go to a weird fit with Miami. I don't know. So we'll have to see. But
yeah,
I guess we could do our winners. I don't want to end on a depressing note. I would like to talk about our winners. So I'll go ahead and start this one. My number 5 is Terry Rozier. Winner, because I don't know how on God's planet Terry Rozier is getting paid 20-ish. What did he get paid? 3 years, 50-something million? I'm going to look that up real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But how he got paid as much as he did this offseason when he hasn't ever shot over 40%, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the NBA. He's 3 years, $58 million. I don't know how he got that much money when he can't, I don't actually dislike him. I think that he'd be a decent backup. Mm-hmm. And he's actually a capable defender.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was his role. He was actually, I would say he was a plus player for the Celtics coming off the bench. But what are the Hornets doing? What are they doing? You lose Kemba and you replace him with less than 40%? I mean, you're never going to get 40% of him. He's going to go in, take the Kemba role. At least Kemba, for as much as he had to shoot, actually made his shots. He wasn't the most efficient, but he was at least an efficient player. Terry Rozier is a winner because he got paid 3 years, $58 million for being just a big name. Having the nickname Scary Terry. That's actually what probably got him $58 million. Is his nickname. That's it. So I mean, Terry Rozier, big winner in this free agency. Once again, I don't hate him. I actually think that he's a pretty solid player. And I would have been happy if the Mavs got him, but not for 3 years, $58 million. That's why he's my loser. My winner. He's my winner. Hornets are loser. Number 4, my 4th best winner, is actually the Pacers. So the Pacers lost Bogdanovich, but I think that they upgraded with Malcolm Brogdon.
Mm-hmm.
They got T.J. Warren.
Mm-hmm.
And you got Jeremy Lamb, and Miles Turner's still there. I'm sure that he's going to get better because he's only really improved each season.
Yeah.
Domantas Sabonis is someone who is also still a young player, and you actually brought him to my attention because I didn't like him in Oklahoma City. I thought he was weird, and he was also a rookie. So.
Oh yeah.
That, but. Oladipo's coming back. I think that the Pacers made the right moves to become more relevant than they were last season in the East.
Uh-huh.
So they're my number 4 because I think that they upgraded even despite losing Bogdanovich. They became a lot better defensively. Bogdanovich wasn't that great of a defender. Brogdon is a really good defender. Yeah. Brogdon shoots better than Bogdanovich, or at least overall he does. And I have to give the Pacers a spot on my list. My number 3, Utah Jazz. I maybe can make them my number 2, but I'm going to keep them my number 3 because getting Mike Conley was huge. Mm-hmm. Getting Bogdanovich was big for them. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's those two right there are enough of an upgrade, in my opinion, that You have to take them seriously.
1,000.
You make them a possible my third tier contender, but they're a contender in my opinion. And I think they improved defensively as well with the Mike Conley signing or trade. And I would also make the argument. I think that's big for me because Donovan Mitchell, his wingspan is something that people talked about coming into NBA, and I mean, with that wingspan and his defensive ability, he can guard, ones, twos, or three. They have a lot of defensive flexibility with him, Mike Conley, and Rudy Gobert. You could probably afford to play someone like Joe Ingles at power forward a decent amount, because you're not actually asking him to rebound that much.
Yep.
Rudy Gobert can take care of everything in the paint.
Yeah.
Now, if you're playing against maybe two big lineups, you might have to change that a little bit. But overall, I think the Jazz set them up beautifully.
Yeah.
To be a contender in the West. My number 2 winner is Harrison Barnes. 4 years, $85 million? The man's getting paid. And, I don't think that he's a bad player. I don't think that he's worth 4 years, $85 million. But I do like him. He's a big winner, though, because he opted out of that last year of his deal. And I don't remember what he was going to make, but I want to say it was somewhere in the $25 to $30 million range.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he was crazy. I thought he was honestly crazy because I was thinking maybe he'll get paid $15 million.
I think you even texted me he needs to fire his agent or something like that.
Yeah. I honestly thought that he might need to fire his agent because I've seen this happen before. Nerlens Noel declined a $17 million per year contract from the Mavs to sign a qualifying offer, and now he's never going to get paid $17 million in a full contract. I mean, I'm not even I think that the next contract that he gets maybe at most could be worth $15 million over like 3 seasons or something like that. He's never going to get paid. So he should have fired his agent. Maybe he did. I think Monte Ellis was someone who declined a 3-year, $39 million deal before he entered. That was an extension with the Bucks before he entered free agency and went to the Mavs, where he signed a 3-year, $25 million deal. He fired his agent. So I'm thinking, man, Harrison Barnes just declined a really, really nice last year of his deal so he could try to get a max contract. Mm-hmm. But now he's getting paid really nice. Really, really nice. So I have to give him a winning spot. He and not only that, at least with Terry Rozier, you could argue that he's somewhat of a loser because he's at least going to a losing team. But Harrison Barnes is actually staying with the Kings. You and I both like the Kings, and he gets to be the 4th best option on that team, getting paid about $22 million a year, 21 and a half or so. So winner for him. And the number 1, I think it has to be the Clippers. Because no one saw. I think a lot of people kind of put them on the back burner, getting Kawhi. It was kind of down to the Lakers and the Raptors, and people kind of talked about the Clippers, but no one really took them seriously that much, except for maybe Clipper fans. But then you get Paul George, and no one saw that coming. I didn't see that. You didn't see that. Nobody saw that. No insider. That was a huge surprise, and now they're one of the best defensive teams. You talk about they have some of the best defensive talent ever.
Yeah.
They have to be my number 1 winner because of everything that they added so suddenly. Also, this is the first time I think maybe in NBA. I didn't take those DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, Chris Paul teams super seriously. Some people might have called them a contender. I never really thought they were that big of a contender. This is undoubtedly a contender. Yeah. This is the first time, at least in our lifetime, that they've ever been truly considered a contender. They're my number 1 winner. I don't think it's really even close.
Yeah, I'm. So at 5, I have the Pacers. Obviously Brogdon, obviously T.J. Warren. All these other guys are going to continue to grow, hopefully. I think that's pretty explanatory. You mentioned a lot of, the different things. So I have them at 5. mainly for the Brogdon deal, but also, like you said, TJ Warren, you know, guys that can help Donovan Mitchell create shots.
You said the Jazz or the Pacers?
The Pacers.
Okay, you just said Donovan Mitchell. You meant
sorry,
Oladipo?
Sorry, Oladipo. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to clarify that because I was sorry.
I was looking ahead.
Okay.
Oladipo create shots. At 4, I have Brooklyn. Maybe not for next year necessarily, but at the very least, I mean, you signed 2 superstars. And, you know, they have also these young assets that can continue to grow. And, you know, just like 3 or 4 years ago, we were talking about how they were the worst run team in the NBA. So it's just been a very, very, honestly, really impressive turnaround from where they were. So I have them at number 4. They would be higher if Kevin Durant was not out for pretty much all of next season, but you have to play that into consideration. At 3, I have the NBA fans because balance is at least back in the NBA.
It's true.
We have there's no surefire team that will win the championship. There's no Golden State Warriors. So, hallelujah, thank God. At 2, I have the Jazz. You know, Mike Conley is huge. We all know how I feel about him. You know, like you said, Ingles can play at that 4. Rudy Gobert is always a solid defensive guy, but I think the big thing there is the addition of Mike Conley to add more, not only veteran leadership, he's been to the playoffs. You know, it's they went from a team that, you know, people kind of took seriously to, you know, we have them all the way up at number 3 or number 4 in the West and being maybe not a surefire contender, but like you talked about, one of the sneaky teams that could sneak in depending on matchups and all this different type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I have them at 2. And obviously number 1, like you said, the Clippers, it's not even close. Everyone wrote them off. You know, so many different people lost all their credibility. All these people that were like, Kawhi to the Lakers is 99%. You know, all this stuff. I go to sleep and I wake up at 6 in the morning and I see Paul George is traded to the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard has agreed to sign with them. Man. And literally, I texted you right then and there at 6 in the morning, and I said, "What the f just happened?"
I saw it at 1. I just remember I finished an episode of something on Netflix.
Yeah.
It was 1. I'm like, oh crap, I got to go to bed, and I saw something about Adrian. I had Adrian Wojnarowski's tweets on notification.
Oh yeah.
Said something about Kawhi. I'm like, okay, what's going on with Kawhi now? So Kawhi Leonard joins Paul George. So to go to the Clippers, and I was like, "What do you mean he's joining Paul George? Paul George isn't on the Clippers." And then in my mind, it kind of hit. I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. Did they trade for Paul George?" And I found the tweets that were talking about him getting traded for a crap ton of picks, which actually I think is a great deal for the Thunder. They've set themselves up beautifully in the future. But that was incredible. I'm really, really happy for the Clippers. And as a result, I'm happy for NBA fans everywhere. Because if LeBron wins, we can't say it was handed to him. If Kawhi Leonard wins, you can't say it was. I mean, there's so much competition toward the top that even though those 2 teams should be the favorites, they're not surefire even in the The Warriors were the surefire favorites for the last 3 years. No doubt. And then they got the Raptors honestly got a little lucky.
Got lucky.
I'm not going to say they didn't deserve it, but
Let's put it like it is. They got lucky.
I mean, yeah. So the Warriors really got unlucky, and the Raptors earned it. But that Warriors team was surefire favorite to win the championship. All three of the last seasons.
Yep.
I would say the Heat were relatively. They weren't surefire, but they were certainly the most. They were by far the most talented team.
Yeah.
Now we see the Lakers, the Clippers, and they're the most talented teams in the league, but you have to take everyone else seriously.
Oh yeah.
This is wonderful.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's awesome.
It's amazing.
It's awesome.
And I mean, who knows? Our predictions in the West could be completely wrong.
Well, exactly.
We're talking about the Mavs and the Trailblazers and the Kings possibly being on the outside when they're probably going to win, somewhere in that 45 ish range.
And they could miss the playoffs badly.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Teams in the East like Detroit might honestly be a below 500 team. And the Knicks that I talked about possibly being a contender for the 8th seed, which is not all that impressive just because the depth of the East is trash. They'll probably be, even if they make the playoffs, they'll probably be a below 500 team or right at 500 like the Nets were last season. So this is awesome. This is great. Do you want to talk about Russell Westbrook or we've talked about him a little bit, but there are rumors obviously about him.
I just think the whole fit with the Heat and Jimmy Butler would be interesting. I don't know how much I would buy into them as being contenders. I think I would still probably have them around the 6 or 5 seed just because I don't really trust. I will say this, though. Those two will play hard every single night. They play hard every single night. You cannot take, no matter what you think about Russell Westbrook or Jimmy Butler, you cannot take away the fact that they play hard and they play to win with everything that they have. So, they could be the very, chip on their shoulder, maybe 4 seed. But I don't take them seriously as really beating really any of the top 3 teams in the East, maybe besides Boston, and definitely not beating anyone in the West. I just don't think that they, that's a weird fit, like you said.
Yeah, if he went to the Heat, I have the Heat as my 6th seed right now. If he went to the Heat, the furthest I could push him up that list would probably be above the Pacers at 4. Maybe I could kind of see it off in the distance of them surpassing the Celtics if something goes wrong with Boston. But that's the thing, is it has to go wrong with Boston. It's
exactly
at that point
and
relying on someone else.
It would have to go perfectly with Miami.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, so they would need shooters, and I think that they have some good shooters, but you need more.
Knockdown. You need flame.
Danny Green type guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And so even Seth Curry's, maybe they could have gotten Seth Curry, but yeah, I mean, I think that would make the Heat better, and I think it would make them more fun to watch, in my opinion. Because I love watching Russell Westbrook. His intensity is phenomenal, and you're right. Jimmy Butler plays with a similar intensity too. That's actually probably one of the knocks on Russell Westbrook is he's always playing up here. He's always playing super high, and in the playoffs, there's no next gear because he's already been playing at that, and that's phenomenal. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But other players play to that playoff gear.
Exactly.
That's what we saw with Lillard this year. Lillard kind of was able to run a marathon, not the sprint. And so I actually would love to see Westbrook on the Pistons. I said that earlier, but I would love that. Him and Blake Griffin, I think, could be pretty fun. Once again, though, they still need shooters. You got Derrick Rose. He's not that much of a shooter. Reggie Jackson's not a shooter. Drummond's definitely not a shooter. Blake Griffin, actually, I don't know who their 5th starter is. Who's their 5th starter? I don't know, but they, I mean, of those 4 players that I mentioned, the best shooter is Blake Griffin, and so they're going to need some more wing guys who can be knockdown shooters as well. That's been one of the biggest failures, in my opinion, of the Thunder. Actually, I'm a big Westbrook guy. I think that he's great at a lot of things, just not shooting. And the biggest knock for the Thunder is that they haven't been able to get this season. You know, you had him and Paul George, and they were great together. I really liked watching them together. But who was the best 3-point shooter on that team?
Abrinas?
Yeah, you know, someone like that. And I just don't think that that's enough for Westbrook. That's not enough for someone like Giannis. That's not enough for LeBron. You know,
not at all.
LeBron could probably do better with someone like Paul George than Westbrook was, but that's LeBron. Westbrook is no one's ever. Maybe people at some point said that he's better than LeBron, but they were wrong. And so, I think that's a okay fit, but they just need to improve. Pretty much anywhere Westbrook gets traded, they're going to need to do more, in my opinion. Other than maybe the Rockets. If the Rockets could find a way to work that out, then
that's interesting.
It could be an interesting because him and Harden, they are friends apparently.
Yeah.
They've stayed friends since they played with each other in Oklahoma City, and they were teammates with each other in Oklahoma City. Now, it has been a while, and Harden's style of playing has changed a bit since he played in Oklahoma City. But ultimately, I do think that they'd have enough respect for each other. And that's one thing I do think about Westbrook is we talk about him as a selfish player. Not we, as in us, but some people out there think that he's just a ball hog and he likes to do things his own way. When there's a player who's aggressive on his team, such as Paul George, I actually think that he's capable of taking less shots in order to try to do other things, become more of a passing assist guy. Kevin Durant was a little bit of. I don't think Kevin Durant was incredibly aggressive, but he was. I mean, I thought they coexisted pretty fine. They could have been better, but I thought that they were a solid coexisting pair. Paul George was a good coexisting pair.
Let me say this about Westbrook. I think KD gets given a pass because the last 3 years, you know, he's been on this, you know, phenomenal team where they just blow everyone out and they sweep everyone. KD was still part of that 3-1 team that blew it to the Warriors three games in a row.
He was a big part of that.
As he bricked shot after shot after shot in the fourth quarter. I was sitting at my lake house with Ian, in fact, actually, and we watched the Thunder literally. Well, we watched KD dribble up in isolation, put up a contested shot, and brick it. Fourth quarter in a row. Three straight times. So
I'm glad you said that.
I want people to remember that because too much gets put on Westbrook as being not necessarily a closer. I think KD gets given way too much of a pass.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think so. One of the things that you said was you watched him take contested shot over contested. All he ever did was pull up. And to be fair, he's great at pulling up, but he would take pull-up contested threes, which are, you know, he's good at that more than other people, but that's still a hard shot for anybody. And so Kevin Durant was not perfect in that series, not even in the slightest. At least Westbrook was missing aggressively. Kevin Durant was playing those last 3 games. He was so soft. It was one of the most pathetic things I'd seen.
It was awful. It was embarrassing.
As far as a mental game, like, he wasn't playing aggressively at all. And so I think that Kevin Durant should not get a pass for that. People put a lot of blame on Westbrook, but ultimately they were friends. They were friends up until Kevin Durant left, and we've heard a little bit about that recently with Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
There was probably something, behind the scenes that we may have missed, but they were friends. And I think that Westbrook can coexist with someone else. It's just, he's someone who needs maybe a more specific type of player. And I think that's one of the biggest knocks on him, and I think that's a fair knock. And so we get him some shooters. I think he'll be fine. But as of now, any team that he goes to needs more of those types of guys. And I think that's really all I have to say about Westbrook. Pistons, Heat. There was someone else out there that I think, who was it? Paul Pierce said is a good fit, and I actually agreed with him. I can't really remember, but there are good fits. He just they need to get shooters with him as well, and so we'll see where that ends up.
Yeah.
I actually would love to see him on the Mavs, but I know that's not going to happen. So I don't know. But well, if you
That's
listen to us, that is everything. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Lunch Sports. DM us any of your ideas, any of your
except Arash.
Yeah, except Arash. Spencer, you're good. Arash, nope, not you. But yeah, DM us any of your thoughts of our podcast, what we could do to get better, what you'd like to hear us talk about, anything. We'd love to hear it. And, that's everything we have for today. But we will be back in the next few days. Until then, y'all have a great rest of your week, great rest of your day. We'll see y'all later.